Yeah, I know 3 Pokemon videos in a row is a bit much, and believe me, I have no intentions of becoming a PokeTuber or anything. That's a fate worse than death right there. But when I'm in a mood to talk about something, that mood hardly ever just goes away. So to satisfy that mood and to give my creative muscles a little exercise, I thought it would be fun to come up with what this little ball of sunshine here evolves into. And I think I've come up with something interesting. But before we get started, no, I'm not going through what I think the other 2 starters will evolve into. Actually, I guess we have a little time, so why not? Basically, I'm one of those people who believes in the whole starter theory stuff. Basically, all grass starters are based on extinct animals, water starters are based on weapons, and the fire starters are based on the Chinese zodiac. There's just too many examples for it all to just be a coincidence 8 times in a row. That's just too much. So, you know, the theory will be an element when I'm making my ideas for the evolutions. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to go too in depth with Sprigatito and Quaxly's evolution, as much as I will with Fuecoco. I'll just go over what I think their final evolutions will be. Basically, for Sprigatito, I think he'll turn into a mix of a saber-toothed tiger and a musketeer. Not sure why I'm thinking he'll be a musketeer since the region is based on Spain, but ninjas don't live in France either, so I think it will be fine. I think Sprigatito over here will be grass steel, and will be similar to the grass starter in Uranium. Oh, and he won't be on 2 legs, he'll basically just be a green saber-toothed tiger with a musketeer hat and a cape, and his tail will kind of have a sword on the end. For Quaxly, I mean, he's pretty much already a little sailor, so I think he'll keep that theme for his evolutions, but for his weapon, I think he'll use an anchor as a weapon. Kinda like Thumpback if you remember Skylanders, and he'll probably be water fighting. I know an anchor isn't a usual weapon, but they gave Intelli on a gun, so I think they'll go a bit more cartoony, you know, this time to contrast that a bit. They literally gave that guy a gun. I don't know what was up with that. Alright, so now let's talk about the main man, Fuecoco. What is Fuecoco? What is he based on? What's the elements of his design? Well, Fuecoco is the carefree fire croc Pokemon, whose design seems to be based on crocodiles, skulls, and peppers. And his name presumably comes from the words fuego, Spanish for fire, and cocodrilo, Spanish for crocodile. But wait, I hear you say. Crocodiles aren't on the zodiac, which is true, and lots of people went, well, I guess not mad. I can't imagine anyone actually got mad over something this stupid, but people were kind of confused at first. Now, for some reason, I thought there was a lizard on the zodiac, but there isn't. I don't know where I got that from. But later, people pointed out how Fuecoco could potentially fit into the snake or bull zodiac, which are definitely possible considering Fuecoco could evolve into a serpent-like Pokemon, you know, similar to how Snivy did it. And as I've learned from this whole situation, male crocodiles are referred to as bulls. Now, some of you might think the bull thing is a stretch, but there are other starters that don't fit into the theory perfectly, and that's why it's more a theory and less a fact, you know? For the sake of this video, we're gonna say Fuecoco is the bull zodiac, as I have a really cool lore and design idea for that. And besides, there's a reason it has hooves for feet, and I have a cool idea for that too. Though whether you think it's a bull or a snake, I love all the designs I've seen for Fuecoco's possible evolutions I've seen so far, and a lot of them are kind of similar to mine, which only makes me believe my idea even more strongly. Now that Fuecoco is out of the way, let's talk about my idea for his next stage of evolution. At level 22, Fuecoco will evolve into Fuetoro, the horned croc Pokemon. Yeah, I know, my artwork ain't amazing, but the ideas are a lot easier to understand if they have a visual. I'm working on my drawing skills, alright? Anyway, Fuetoro is based on crocodiles, bulls, and bull skulls. When Fuecoco evolves, it gains a longer body with 2 tufts of hair on its head turning into horns and a nose ring that heat up when it's threatened. The name comes from fuego and toro, which is Spanish for bull. Fuetoro is usually quite a carefree Pokemon similar to Fuecoco, but it does have a mean streak in it if it's ever put into a dangerous or stressful situation. It is considered to be a very dangerous Pokemon that only the strongest of the strong can handle. Because of this, the people of... we don't know the name of the region at the time of recording. Let me look something up. Okay, so Scarlet and Violet have a pretty obvious color scheme of scarlet, violet, and gold. So I think I'll just take the Spanish words for those colors, Escarlata, Violeta, and Oro, and mix them all to make the name Esoleta, which I don't think is a word, and don't worry, I know it's stupid. They'll come up with something better for the actual game, I'm sure. Anyway, the people of Esoleta used to capture Fuetoro specifically for fighting in the ring, which would obviously make the Fuetoro terrified and scared enough to become their more aggressive selves. The people of Esoleta held these fights for a very long time, until one day they just stopped. Alright, I can already hear two things. One, why on earth am I bringing up bullfighting in a Pokemon game? Well, if we're being honest, bullfighting is something Spain is famous for, and over the years it has gained quite a bit of controversy around it. So I think if Game Freak is making a region based on Spain, they probably would have it in the game in some way, shape, or form. Probably in a more sanitized kind of way, making it more like contest or something. But I'm going somewhere with the Fuetoro lore here, so I need this to be like real bullfighting, including the fact that when the fight is over, the Fuetoro are killed. They're not spared, they're not sent to the wild, they're killed. Now, for the person in the back whose hand's been raised since the start of this section, yes, Fuetoro does evolve later than any other previous starter Pokemon in the series, at level 22. This is because Fuetoro didn't used to have an evolution. It'd go Fuecoco, then Fuetoro, and that was it. Until that fateful night. In Esoleta Legends, there's a story. A story about how the region quit the tradition of the Fuetoro fights, and why they never brought it back. They say one night in the holding stables where the Fuetoro were kept, there was a lone Fuetoro that never liked to fight. It was captured smelling flowers in a field somewhere, and whenever they sent it out to fight in the ring, it would just cower away in the corner till the crowd demanded another Fuetoro. Now years on years on years of hunting and trapping Fuetoro to fight meant that there was very few still around in those days, and you couldn't breed Fuetoro because they would get too nervous or aggressive if kept in captivity for too long. So they always just thrown the cowardly Fuetoro back into the pen where all the Fuetoro were kept, even the dead bodies, as it was believed it'd make the fiery Pokemon more angry and aggressive. On that night, 2 guards went in to see if there was any Fuetoro left to fight in the coming matches, and all that was left was the lone, cowardly Fuetoro, who was too shook up to even eat with all of his brothers and sisters laid dead right there beside him. The guards chuckled to themselves that there was no use telling the fighters there was any Fuetoro left, since the only one left was the cowardly one. So they decided to make it easy on themselves and just kill the last Fuetoro right then and there. It'll suck, but capturing more Fuetoro for the ring would be easier than making this little joke of a Pokemon fight. The lone Fuetoro was barely alive at this point, but something about the guards claiming to just capture and hurt more Fuetoro kinda set it off a bit, so the lone Fuetoro got on his feet and moved as if he meant to charge at the guards. They both laughed as there was no way this little coward could beat them all by himself. But what the guards didn't know was that the lone Fuetoro wasn't alone in that cell. The souls of all the dead Fuetoro and Fuecoco around him were with him that day, and they told him to use all of their power to save his life and the lives of his brothers and sisters outside of this ring. Now, the stable or pen that the Fuetoro was kept in was very dark. It was the interior of the ring at the time before electricity, in the middle of the night no less. So the only way the guards could get an accurate count of the Fuetoro at night was by looking for the glow of the nose rings and horns. So they knew there was no more Fuetoro if there wasn't anything glowing in the pen. Now the 2 guards started laughing as they noticed there wasn't a speck of light left in that pen, which only made them laugh harder as that meant the poor little Fuetoro died before it had a chance to charge. As they were laughing so hard their bellies started to hurt, a big floosh of green flames engulfed the pen in light before dimming out just as fast. The guards, now scared out of their minds, reassured themselves it's just the Z's getting a hold of their tired bodies. Fuetoro can't make green fire. right? They decided to investigate as maybe a shiny or something else was in there, and it would make a great show for the fighter tomorrow. As they went into the pen, they noticed a lot of heat. Not in front of them, but from behind. They turned to see the metal bars and door in front of the pen had been melted shut. They looked at each other. No Fuecoco was that fast or that powerful to melt metal in such short time. And that's when a big, burning green flame started at the tip of a long tail before burning its way up to the head of a brand new Pokemon. They say hell opened up that night and burned every bit of that old tradition to ash. By the time morning came, there was very little left of the ring, only scorch marks and half-melted rubble left everywhere, with what looked like giant Fuecoco footprints burned into the ground, leading up to a nearby woods. The people of the nearby village looked all through the scorched earth for survivors, or at least some sort of clue as to what happened. But there was nothing. No remains, either human or Pokemon, were found. There was a sort of scent, like the smell of brimstone, or as we know it today as sulfur. Though the villagers aren't entirely sure from where, as manure does have sulfur in it, but some of the people remember seeing fire of all colors such as blue, green, and white engulfing the ring. So it could have been a demon. The villagers were on high alert, and have pretty much had the village on lockdown till the demon was either captured or killed. A week passes without any sign that the creature was still around, though they did hear of it attacking other rings not too far from the village. But one day an awful storm started to ravage the land. The villagers all took shelter except for a little girl. The little girl had lost her mother some time ago, and visited her grave often to plant her mother's favorite flowers. The storm so happened to fall on the day she was supposed to visit her mother's grave. So the little girl snuck out of the storm shelter while her father and some other villagers were out saving people who were caught in the storm. The little girl made her way up through the woods and into the field where her mother was laid to rest, expecting to see a grave and flowers be torn to shred by the storm. But what she saw instead amazed and terrified her at the same time. She saw a huge Pokemon protecting the flowers with its massive body. It said that the father ran straight into the storm after he saw she was missing, and by the time he found her, the physical storm had already stopped. But a storm of emotions started up within him when he realized what he was seeing. A storm of joy, fear, and possibly anger as he looked out to see the demon not just protecting the flowers, but his wife's grave and his little girl as well. Sometime later, the father and the daughter returned to the village that started to cheer for their safe return till they saw what they had brought back home with them. In Spino, the Brimstone Pokemon, a fire and ghost type based on a few different things, including crocodiles, bulls, skulls, and peppers like its pre-evolutions, along with a bit of Baryonyx, Spinosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, Demon, and a little bit of the story of Ferdinand mixed in there. At first, I didn't like the idea of Fire Ghost when I first heard about it in rumors, since we had just had Hisuian Typhlosion, but as I formulated this design along with noticing the hooves and of course learning about the croc bull thing, I decided that sure, why not have a ghost pepper monster from hell, that sounds fun. I wasn't sure about the name though. I thought maybe calling it Niflspine, kinda like the Norse Niflheim, or maybe bring back the prefix Fue, from Fuecoco and Fuetoro. But then I'm like, why would I use Norse hell when Spanish hell just works just fine? And why not just drop the Fue part, since this Pokemon's not really a natural evolution from Fuetoro. The name Inspino pretty obviously comes from Inferno, Spanish for hell, and Spinosaurus. But I think it's better to consider Inspino more a Baryonyx than a Spinosaurus, since the spine for him is only a fire that it can put out if chose to. Though, like a Spinosaurus, Inspino is an all-fours type of fighter. He just likes standing on his two legs for intimidation. He's still a bull and a croc, so all fours is the way to go for him. Speaking of the spine, you may have noticed that on some of my drawings it turns into a bull-like mohawk. That's because I think it looks awesome, And I have to make this guy as much bull as he is reptile. You know, there's a balance going on here. And I opted to go for a more T-Rex type snout to kind of help him look more like a crocodile, since the more longer, thinner nose of the Spinosaurus or Baryonyx looks more alligator or caiman to me. The demon and the pepper comes in more when you look at his lower half, not only making him more like a pepper with the red to green, but if I had the art skills I'd have also made the lower half hairy, you know, kind of to go along with the cartoon devil vibe he's got going on. Plus, ghost type, ghost pepper, absorbing your dead family, come on. Oh, and the Baryonyx thing. Another reason to consider it more of a Baryonyx is because the Baryonyx is like the main dinosaur of Spain, so kind of works there too, you know? But why specifically green fire, some of you must be wondering. Well, I remember reading somewhere that in old Christian stories, green fire symbolizes freedom, which fits in Spino very well. If it turns out I'm completely wrong about that and that's not what it symbolizes, well, then it just looks really cool and it helps that spicy feel, doesn't it? Though the fire can be different colors, but we'll talk about that when we get to his signature move. The little girl claims that she found in Spino protecting the flowers on her mother's grave, and she decided she couldn't let it guard the grave alone, and they bonded over their shared protection of the area. The village and Spino were both hesitant to trust each other at first, but they soon gained a mutual understanding and a little bit of friendship. This little girl's bravery to befriend the the brave in Spino eventually led to the complete erasure of the Fuecoco fights. Most places were enchanted by the story and put it into their own Fuecoco fights, and other places were too scared to chance their own demon coming loose, so they decided to stop theirs out of safety. To this day, the story is told to all those who will listen, or to those who attempt hell. And to ensure the fights would never return, all the Fuecoco that reached level 38 now have the ability to become in Spino, making it a common thing for Fuecoco to evolve now. And that's the story of Spino. I think it's a really interesting idea to base such a monster on so many different attributes that are found in Spain. The spicy cuisine, bullfighting, some religious stuff. Not to mention the Baryonyx as a factor in Spino's design is really cool, as that dinosaur used to live in Spain and it's kind of the country's main dinosaur from what I've heard. Not to mention calling the fighting arenas rings, like the rings of Inferno. That's pretty genius, not to toot my own horn, but the bull ring in his nose could also be, alright, you know, I'm pushing it. Another factor I didn't mention all that much was the Ferdinand inspiration. I think it really comes more apparent if we talk about the personality of Spino. It's a very carefree and happy Pokemon despite its appearance, though a way it differs from Ferdinand is the fact Spino loves fighting. He really likes fighting. It's a side effect from the unnatural quote-unquote evolution. He's kind of like Goku, really, very happy and chill 90% of the time, but man, when it's time to fight, it loves every second. And unlike Goku, Spino is very brutal, even if it don't gotta be, helping to make sure the Fuecoco fights never happen again. I mentioned earlier about Spino's special move, so let's talk about it. White Hot Spiral is based on the alligator death roll, a thing alligators do to dismember their prey. Spino's spines light up going through each color of fire till it reaches the hottest one, white. Then with its jaw full of white fire, it charges at the opponent, knocking them in the air with its horns before jumping up after it. Spino then crunches down on the opponent, covering them with white fire before spinning itself toward the ground with the opponent still in its jaw. They hit the ground with enough force to cause a pillar of white fire to shine up into the sky, leaving the opponent with the fire spin status effect. And yes, this was the same white pillar of fire that was seen in the ring on that fateful night. Now let's talk about shinies. This was a very difficult thing for me to decide. At first I thought it would be cool to only change the green parts to another color for Spino and just keep the red parts the same, but that would make the pre-evolution shinies look exactly the same, so I kinda had to drop that idea. I like when shinies are consistent, which leads me to a few different options, such as only changing the red body, giving us a few nice looking shinies. I'm a really big fan of the green, blue, and orange ones, to be honest, especially the orange as it has the spicy lime kind of look. But then again, we can just change all the colors, and if we did that, I think the blue and purple is amazing. Not just because the contrast to the original, but also since brimstone, aka sulfur, burns blue. And I'm really into the demon vibe for this guy, I cannot lie. I think it fits Fuecoco to go from a cute little bro to an absolute monster. Really going back to how older starters were designed. Cute to destructive. It's really the best way to go. But with all that being said, what do you think of my ideas? I know the artwork isn't great, I apologize, but I knew I couldn't effectively explain without some sort of visual aid. That's just how it is, but hey, I am trying to work on my drawing. Will I get anywhere with it? We'll have to see. But all that aside, thank you all for watching. This is a very different kind of video than I usually do, and I hope to make more creative content like this. Not saying reviews are uncreative, it's just really fun to make a video like this, you know? It's just a change of pace to really put my own creative muscles to work and kind of make something. It's just not the same as reviews at the end of the day. In reviews, you're reviewing someone else's work, and that's just more... how that stick figure in Ratatouille put it?
Va te faire foutre, fils de pute sans mère, pour connaître cette langue de mer, pourquoi diable est-ce que l'oiseau s'écrit comme ça, et aussi omelette au fromage?
Yeah, that. You know, it's not really fun going around crapping on other people's work, even if you think the criticism is needed and you just gotta really get it off your chest. Mostly cause it's more of a corporate issue when it comes to some of these games nowadays, and the actual teams aren't really all that at fault. Most of the time. But at the end of the day, I'm criticizing someone else's work and not really making something similar level to it, you know? Not that I'm trashing reviews, there's plenty of reviews online that I enjoy more than the games themselves. It's just different, you know? It's like basketball and soccer, apples and oranges, tomatoes, potatoes, or something. I think I'm just somebody who likes the occasional game of basketball, but at heart, soccer is really what gets me motivated. I love making reviews. If I hated them, I'd stop doing them. I love talking about the positives and negatives about different games and putting my thoughts into what I think is a funny video. To be honest, I don't even think of my stuff as reviews anyway. I just think of the videos as a way for me to talk about the stuff I like to talk about. And there I go rambling on again. What was even the point of this again? Who cares? Thank you all for watching, and I hope you tell me your ideas for the starters of Sorletta. That is a terrible region name. But tell me your ideas in the comments, because apparently I really like designing and talking about stuff. Also, yes, there is quite the size difference from Fuetoro to Inspino. Like, Fuecoco is the size of a basketball, Fuetoro is like a golden retriever or Great Dane, and then Inspino is just an absolute monster. That's my favorite kind of Pokemon design.